Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'll run through my thoughts on today's PMQs as usual, as Keir Starmer trotted out some proper dad-level Christmas jokes at Sunak's expense, and the Prime Minister, surprisingly, given his big win last night, seemed incredibly irritable, failed to show any concern for those who will be struggling this Christmas, and trotted out some baffling and completely unnecessary lies about Tory outcomes. But the best came not from any party leader, but from Bryant, who completely broke Sunak's failures down in one short question. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So there was a real combative mood in the House between Conservative and Labour MPs. The Conservatives bit boisterous after the Rwanda vote last night. Now, had it been defeated, as we were told was very much on the cards, that would have been their party in complete chaos. Would almost certainly have meant either a new leader or a very early snap election, and would absolutely mean more losses coming when that election happened. But the problem has now been deferred at least, and possibly completely defeated. You know, it's possible that many MPs, even on the right of the party, recognise that they only hurt themselves with open rebellion. Labour MPs, on the other hand, they were making the most of the last PMQs for a month, and last night's vote aside, the general news is not very good for Sunak. Maybe this is why he's chosen to just lie some more. Confident that his MPs will not allow him to face a Privileges Committee investigation like they did with Johnson. For example, there was one point where Starmer brought in the economy, suggesting that instead of squabbling with his MPs, maybe Sunak would like to try managing the economy. Sunak insisted that the economy is growing. Now, in reality, the economy is going nowhere. It goes up a bit, then it goes down a bit. But over the past 15 years, it has gone nowhere. The Tories have not grown the UK economy at all. And in real terms, they've actually shrunk it. So whenever the news says, oh, the GDP went up a little bit that last month, they amplify the hell out of it, and then whenever it says, oh, it went down a little bit now, they sort of, oh, what's that? Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that news. So the problem is, the news that came out today, we had October's figures and the economy shrunk, and it shrunk by 3 times more than expected. This is why Starmer threw that question in. It wasn't part of his main thrust. He wasn't asking questions about the economy. I don't think he really had a main thrust. I think it was just lots of sticks to poke Sunak with and see which one would make him squeal, which most of them seem to for some reason. Because the last thing you would want to do is, as a Prime Minister, when the economy is growing, or say the economy is growing rather, when the headline news that day is that it's shrunk by 0.3%. Because you just look dishonest, which of course he is, but you don't want to look it. Because it didn't end there. He also insisted that the government had delivered a record number of new homes. Now, no, he hasn't. In fact, not even close. Not only is the average number of new homes completed each year still well down on the last Labour government, have they been in power for about the same amount of time? Labour in power for 13 years, the Conservatives have now been in power for 13 and a half years. Very similar period of time. Overall number of new homes built under Labour exceeds that built by the Conservatives. So, but also, even on an individual basis, there has been no year when the number of new homes completed under the Tories has beaten the record for when Labour were last in power. But all of that is neither here nor there, because it's the stuff of madness to talk about record when you're talking about home building. Because no government, Labour or Tory, is going to deliver the scale of new home builds that we had in the 50s and 60s for a very long time, if it ever does. So it was another fatuous lie. There's no need for it either. And on the subject of records, Sunak actually started off with one in response to Starmer's first question, which was just bizarre. Starmer began with one of many terrible dad-level Christmas jokes. So after being serious, after reflecting on the death of the asylum seeker at the Bibby Stockholm yesterday, and then commenting on Mark Drayford's service, because he announced he is now stepping down, Starmer said that Christmas is a time of peace and goodwill to all. Has anyone told the Tory party? To which Sunak replied that Christmas is also a time for families, and that under the Conservatives, we do have a record number of them. I thought he was making fun of Boris Johnson. Turns out it was a reference to the so-called 5 families on the right of his party, the 5 major factions who refer to themselves in the style of mafia families. So I didn't see that reference for what it was until Starmer pointed it out later on. But I have to say, this made Sunak's general behaviour all the more puzzling. If Sunak feels that he can make fun of the factions on the right of the party who are trying to bring him down, that would suggest he really is confident that they're too divided to do so, as I discussed in my video earlier. And I'm thinking, well, if he's that confident then, why was he so petulant today? Shouldn't he have been like cock-a-hoop? He really was irritable. At one point, Starmer referred to a letter from a homeless child that said that he didn't want new toys this Christmas. He just wanted his own toys out of storage. Now, an obvious response to that from a halfway intelligent Prime Minister would be to express sympathy with the child and for others in the same situation and say, this is why it's so important that we get on with our policies and deliver for the people of this country like this poor child. It would be bullshit, but that is the textbook political response. What was Sunak's actual response? Yeah, well, you should have supported us when we wanted to let builders off with the cost of river pollution. It's like, what the heck? Seriously? Oh, yeah, that kid can't have his toys, and it's all because you don't think we should have more pollution in this country. What? Starmer also talked about military personnel who'd be away from their families this Christmas. Any word of sympathy or solidarity with those from the Prime Minister? No, not a bit of it. Oh, don't worry. He'll be out for the photo ops later this month, pretending to serve dinner on an aircraft carrier or something. But he couldn't even say anything to them in response to them today. Just more petulant about, oh, how it's all Labour's fault that with their 198 MPs, Sunak can't get legislation passed when he's got 350 MPs. Just couldn't understand it. I know I keep saying that Sunak's really bad at politics, but this was off the chart. He gave the initial impression that he was secure in his leadership. I mean, he's making jokes about the factions on the right of his party. You don't do that if you want them on board. It's like he's taken the attitude he doesn't need them on board. They're too divided to be an effective opposition to him. That's what he's given the impression of. And unless something changes, like this means he is now confidently going to be the Tory leader that takes them into the next election. And that election can be at time of his choosing. If last night's vote was anything to go by, all this talk of a serious threat to Sunak from the right of the party sounds now like hyperbole from the media. There was no real sign of it. So why wasn't Sunak more cheerful? But the best came not from Starmer and his terrible jokes, like referring to the Tories as like putting on a nativity. He says, well, they found their donkey, but the search for the 3 wise men may take a while. But Chris Bryant, he gave a stunning speech at the debate yesterday. I'll try and remember to put a link to the clips of that yesterday in the description below. It was really good. But he really got to the heart of Sunak's failure today as well. He asked, what's worse, losing WhatsApp messages as a tech bro, losing £11.8 billion to fraud as Chancellor, presiding over the biggest fall in living standards in history, or desperately clinging to power when you're even more unpopular than Boris Johnson? The last bit reflecting the latest polling, which shows that Sunak is now as unpopular as his party. But I'll do a separate video on that, I think, tonight. But it was a good question because not only did it completely ridicule Sunak, but it sparks that thought amongst potential Tory rebels that if Sunak is now less popular than Johnson, well, why are they clinging on to him? As for Stephen Flynn of the SNP, he continued questions about those in Gaza. There was a focus on the children. Sunak said that he wanted a sustainable ceasefire, which includes Hamas not bombing Israel, and that he told Netanyahu that too many people had lost their lives. Flynn continues to plug this line. He thinks it's a wedge issue between the SNP and Labour. In reality, I've said it before, I don't think it is. I think he's making the same mistake the Tories are in chasing Reform UK votes. They're appealing to people who will either not vote Labour anyway, or will hold their nose to get rid of the Tories. And I can understand them trying things like this. You would try it, why wouldn't you? But they used to, very recently, including with Flynn as leader, they used to attack Westminster policy on something, then compare it with a Holyrood policy which was delivering results, as if to say, well, if only Holyrood was deciding everything, we would get more of these results, right? they're not doing that now. They haven't done that for a long time. And the longer they avoid doing it, the more likely people are to wonder, is it because there aren't any Holyrood successes to brag about? Or do they just not think that their target voters believe it? But there we are. No more PMQs until next month, and not even early next month. It is a proper month away. Parliament goes into recess next Tuesday. Apologies if at my behest you stocked up on more popcorn than was actually required. That rebellion really didn't materialise for Sunak. Yet he was still in a foul mood today. Maybe he still thinks there's trouble ahead. The drama will now have to come entirely from intrigue in the media. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.